One day in early summer, the Fat Controller called a meeting of the engines. "You have all heard," he announced, "of the thin clergyman." "Isn't he the one who wrote stories about us?" ventured Thomas. "Well done, Thomas," agreed the Fat Controller. "Sadly, he has now died. But this year it is 100 years since he was born." He paused. "To mark the auspicious occasion," he went on. "What's suspicious?" squeaked Percy, and then hoped the Fat Controller hadn't heard him. But he had. "Auspicious, Percy. It means important," explained the Fat Controller. "To mark this, important occasion, I have arranged for a bust of the thin clergyman to be unveiled here in a few weeks. Your duties will be adjusted so that you can all attend. There will be a very special visitor there to unveil the bust." Some time later, the Fat Controller spoke to James. "I have a very important job for you," he said. "The crate with the thin clergyman's statue has arrived at the other railway. I want you to fetch it, please." James puffed off proudly. He felt even prouder when he began the journey back to the big station, with the crate safely on a truck. But just as James had passed through Henry's tunnel, there was a loud rumble and an enormous crash. James's driver looked back in alarm. Part of the tunnel had collapsed behind them. The railway to the outside world was completely cut off. James stopped at the next signal box, and his driver told the signalman what had happened. Later, the Fat Controller sent Donald, Douglas, and Henry to help repair the tunnel. But until it was mended, no trains could reach the other railway from the island of Sodor. "And no engines can get onto the island either," pointed out Gordon. "Pip and Emma are stuck on the other side of the tunnel, and they were supposed to be bringing the important visitors." On Thomas's branch line, the engines were worried too. "We've all got jobs to do on the day," said Thomas, "but what if no one can get here?" "Don't worry," soothed his driver. "Bertie and his friends are meeting all the trains on the other railway and bringing the passengers over." The Fat Controller gave orders to carry on as usual, but Gordon's train to the other railway had to stop at the work station. Bertie brought in passengers, but Gordon complained that it wasn't the same. Meanwhile, Percy had a smaller problem. "Why is everyone bothered about something that's broken?" he asked Toby one day. Toby was puzzled. "Broken?" he asked. "What do you mean broken?" "Well," explained Percy, "the Fat Controller said it was bust." "What's bust?" "The thin clergyman." "Poor man," said Percy sadly. Thomas, listening nearby, laughed. "The thin clergyman isn't broken," he chuckled. "A bust is a sort of statue, just the head and shoulders of the person." Percy cheered up at once. "Oh," he said, "that's all right then." "I just hope that everybody can get to see it," put in Toby. A few days later, the Fat Controller announced that the tunnel had been mended. The inspectors worked through the night on their safety checks, and the first train allowed through was Pip and Emma. At the big station, the bust of the thin clergyman beneath a silk cover was ready. The engines waited anxiously. At last, Pip and Emma arrived, and the first person off the train was a prince. The Fat Controller greeted him, and after a short speech, the prince pulled a cord, and the silk cover fell to the ground, revealing a perfect likeness of the thin clergyman. "My parents," said the prince, "read stories about your railway to me as a child. There will never be anything like it anywhere."